Stories. Who doesn't love a good story? Stories since the beginning of time have inspired, they've taught, they've entertained. They can help us change our moods. One time when I was in college, I'd come back from a camping trip or something, waiting for a family gathering at my grandparents' house. I fell asleep in the basement before everybody else had arrived, and was awoken by the smell of the wonderful cookout that was going on, and everybody had already begun gathering out in the little patio out there, and I woke up, and I proceeded to walk out to the patio by walking right through the screen door, right in front of my uncle who was grilling. Everybody's looking at me like, what did you just do? And whenever I think of that story and tell that story, my mood changes. I begin to chuckle and laugh, like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? And that's the power of stories. Sue Monk Kidd once wrote, and she's the author of Secret Life of Bees, a book that became a movie, that stories need to be told. If they aren't told, they die. And when they die, we forget who we are and why we're here. I alter that slightly by saying good stories, uplifting stories, powerful, positive stories need to be told, because if they aren't told, they die. And when they die, we don't know who we can become and why we're here. Stories shape us. They shape cultures, and they shape our identity. I first really began to think about this idea of planting possibility way back in 1987 when I was at a Tony Robbins event out in California, waiting in the lobby of a grand ballroom for his first night of the Fear and the Power of the Firewalk experience, and began to think about what Tony was doing and looking at all the different people and understanding, wow, this is really something about helping people reframe what's possible. Because too many people are like the people described in Og Mandino's book, The Greatest Miracle in the World, when Simon Potter, one of my favorite characters in the book, says that most people in varying ways are already dead. In one way or another, they have given up on their dreams, their ambitions, their desire for a better life. They've surrendered the fight for their self-image. They have compromised their great potential. They have settled for a life of mediocrity, days of despair, nights of tears. They are nothing more than living deaths confined to the cemetery they're choosing. Yet they do not need to remain in that state. They can perform the greatest miracle in the world. They can come back from the dead. This idea of planting possibility is at the heart of that. Over the 30 years I worked in education, where I was working primarily with middle school students who really struggled in school, and so many of them, the stories they told themselves were at the heart of their struggles, and that's true for all of us. And over those years, we've got very good at helping them identify this and begin to make shifts so that they improved academically in their relationships and athletics and all kinds of areas of their life. And what I came to understand is what we were doing in this metaphor of sow possibility, become a sower of possibility, is really began to explain the very process, because the very first thing we need to do is identify the seeds to our story. The seeds to our story matter, whether they are true or not. You need to identify the labels, the beliefs, the emotions that you're still holding on to, the decisions that you've made. You need to get them down in writing. Awareness is a powerful tool. The beginning of wisdom, as Socrates said, is to know thyself. You want to plant possibility in your life? Identify the seeds to your story. But that's not enough. Once you identify them, you have to take ownership of them. Because until you own them, you don't really have permission to edit them out of your story, to weed the garden of your soul, to get rid of those things that you don't really want in your life, those beliefs and the labels and the emotions that you've been holding on to and carrying. If you want to plant possibility, you need to own your story. And then you can weed your garden. And there are lots of different tools that you can use to weed your garden. Some of the simplest can be the most profound, like a simple letting go ceremony, where you let go, you write down slips of paper, you burn them up, and you watch them disappear. But truly make that a ceremony is where the power lies. You know, Andy was a student who came to us when he was in 6th grade, who had struggled academically, in relationships, and all centered around his self-image and the stories he told himself about himself academically. So in order to cover up those insecurities that he had, he was trying humor, but he wasn't very good at humor, and people would be laughing at him, not with him, but all he heard was laughter, and laughter is a good thing, and it really became problematic, and he was pushing people away. So as he came into our program, we kind of knew that we needed to help Andy identify these seeds of the story that he's been telling himself, show him how to take ownership of them, and then how to weed them out of his life. Well, we did that, and we were making some really good progress, but there was still one area of his life, academically, centered around math, that was really kind of hindering this real dramatic growth that we were hoping to be able to achieve with him. And then, beginning of his 8th grade year, it finally came out. Mr. Barnard, I can't do math. Nobody in my family's been able to do math. I come from a long line of math dummies. Oh. So Andy, because you inherited this, that's the reason that you struggle in math? Yes. So let me ask you a question, Andy. If you were to inherit your house from your father and your mom, you would own it, wouldn't you? So you could decide whether you wanted to keep it or get rid of it, sell it, right? Because you inherited it, it's yours, you own it. Yes. Andy, the same is true with beliefs. That simple reframe helped him take ownership of that last piece of the puzzle. And he was now given permission for him to be able to weed it out. And when he weeded it out, he went from the bottom 10th percentile, 90% of his peers doing better in math on a standardized math test, to being solidly average at 50%. He went from 5th grade math to 8th grade level math all in 1 year. Because he finally understood what was possible. See, that's still not really enough, because storms are going to come in life. And if you don't keep cultivating that garden of possibility, weeds can be blown in, storms can do damage. So it's a lifelong process. You really need to apply heat to your life, habit, emotion, attitude, training for life. You need to build the habits that will become rituals that will enable you to constantly manage your emotions and learn from those that won't impact your attitude and the decisions you make and who you become. And really, to do that, you need to have an empowerment team to help you turn those habits into rituals. And when Andy started doing those, he was able to maintain those gains and continue to grow when he went to high school. Started doing track and field. Began to develop even better friendships. Today, Andy is a father of 4. He's got a decent job, part-time business. All of that is all about planting possibility, which he was able to do in his life. You know, when those doors opened for me in California, and I went through the crowd, I still wasn't sure whether I was going to be one walking coals, but I really wanted to see it with my own eyes. And then by the end of the evening, there I am. I'm in line. I could feel the cool pavement on my bare feet. And as I get closer to the 14 feet bed of burning coals. I could feel that heat. And there I was, next in line. When I got across, the emotions are really difficult to explain. I think it was maybe a new emotion, a fusion of all kinds of different emotions. But they're very powerful. But what I came to learn and came to understand was that I actually had to experience possibility. It wasn't really enough just to know walking across burning coals is possible. I need to experience it. But the other lesson I learned was I didn't have to walk across burning coals to experience possibility. Because every day we experience possibility. You see, when we frame it such that we understand that at one point, what I am doing today, at one time, was only something that was possible. When I was young, the idea of speaking to a group like you was only something that was possible in my imagination. Everything that we are doing at one time in our life was only a possibility. So every day we experience possibility. And you can shape that possibility. You can control the possibility. You can plant the seeds of possibility by identifying the seeds of your story you're telling yourself, taking ownership of them, weeding the garden of your soul by taking out the things that you don't want to have, and creating an empowerment team to help you build those rituals in your life that will help you navigate the storms of life and cultivate a garden of possibility so that you can continue to experience greater and greater levels of possibility in your life. There's a movie, Coach Carter. In that movie, Coach Carter is based on a true story, but he's got an athlete. There's an interesting relationship between those two, but he had been asking this athlete regularly what his deepest fear was, and his teammates always like, why does he keep asking that? The athlete wasn't all that sure. But at the end of the movie, this young man stands up and he gives a speech. Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. And there's nothing enlightened about you shrinking in the presence of others so they don't feel insecure. We were all meant to shine as children do. It's not just for some of us, it's for everyone. And when you let your light shine, you're consciously giving permission for others to do the same. And when you're liberated from your fear, you're automatically giving permission for others to be liberated as well. You know, that idea of liberating fear from the great works of wisdom begins with love, the kind of love you're supposed to have for yourself, because that casts out fear, and planting possibility comes from love. I wish you all could have met Bobby. Bobby was a 5-year-old boy. When I met him, I was 16 years old, running a police athletic league baseball program, and Bobby was one of the children who would show up every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, excited to play baseball, big infectious smile. Well, Bobby had a club stump for a right hand and dragged his right leg behind him, and every day, you know, it was like, oh, nice try, Bobby. Go to the end of the bench as he would try to get that hit. He'd go and sit at the end of the bench waiting for the next inning, and as soon as he sat down, he'd get that smile and start cheering his teammates on. This happened day after day after day, and then finally it happened. He hit a little dribbler out in front of home plate, and Bobby is running to first base, dragging his right leg behind him as fast as he can, determined he's going to get to first base. The catcher picked up with the ball, threw it towards the first baseman. First baseman missed it. Ball went to right field. Right fielder picks it up. He's going to throw Bobby out. And Bobby, there standing at first base, jumping for joy. His teammates rush off the bench like he just won the World Series with a walk-off hit. Bobby's light shined as children's do. And he was giving permission for everybody else's light to shine too. That kind of joy and passion is my prayer, that Bobby never lost that somebody showed him how to weed the garden of his soul for life. And I'm encouraging all of you to identify the seeds of your story. Take ownership of those. Weed out what doesn't belong. Create those empowerment teams to build powerful rituals in your life that will help you navigate the storms of life, because they will come. As sure as death and taxes, storms of life will come. So just remember, if you want to plant possibility in your life, you have to become a sower of possibility.